Welcome to another video for WinBidPro version 15 by GDS Estimating. In this one I'd like to talk about the way the parts work in a job versus the parts for the catalog itself, and how you basically have the ability to manipulate all that information. Let's start with the catalog parts, so the master parts for this manufacturer. If I click on parts list from the menu there, I see a big list of parts, in this case almost 4,500, and they've got part numbers, descriptions, a multiplier, a stock length for anything that's a stock part, a part type, which is kind of like a general category for the part, and then pricing. And there are a few catalogs in our list that don't have pricing, and that's because the manufacturer didn't want to provide it. But most of them do have the pricing, and the manufacturers are good about keeping us updated. But you have the ability to change your net price by putting in multipliers. So this is all list pricing now, but you can change that to what your cost is by putting in a multiplier. And you'll also notice that there's no, in this case, mill price for these door parts. And that's because there's no mill part available for this for these types of parts. So the pricing is kind of showing you what's a valid finish for a certain part. And if I were to go up and look at some other part, like a clip, let's say, some of the clips look like they might have some different finish colors here, but most clips like these would just have a mill or no finish price. So we don't have to look at a list of zeros and find the price. It's just right here alone by itself. And you'll notice the package quantities apply to things like hardware and accessories. So all that is configured in your master parts list. So you can edit any of this information. There's no restrictions to it. You can add parts of your own or made up parts or whatever that get added to the list. So all that stuff's available whenever you work with a job. Now the framing systems, like we've created these drawings here, or I've created them, and the framing system, let's edit one of these, for each elevation has its own configuration and its own parts assigned, and all the different parts, clips, gasket, and stock lengths. So all these parts have been configured. You have the ability to go in and change these part numbers, add to them, adjust quantities for things like screws, like this is calling for 2 at each head, and you can adjust all this information. But all the catalogs you download has pre-configured framing systems, so it comes with something in there, and then you can actually change or delete or add to them if you want. So that's where, when we get back here to our final parts, there's a bunch of different part reports, but your final parts report is your kind of your job summary of parts. And this shows a compilation of all the parts needed for this job, no matter how many elevations there are. So it could be feet of gasket, a count for setting blocks, things like that. And you have the ability to actually adjust and modify information here too. So I can change descriptions, I can change package quantities, I can change pricing, so all these things, and they only apply to this job. But unless I actually decide that I want some of those changes, and you'll have to figure this out case by case, but if you decide you made a bunch of changes here and you want them applied to the master parts list that we were just looking at, you can do that by hitting update master parts. But just know that all the changes that you've made, so it would take any changes you made to this entire list and go update the master parts list, because otherwise these changes just remain for this job itself. And you have other abilities here. You can actually add line items. So when I hit add line item, I can actually go search for a part in the master list. And you have the ability to kind of look for certain things. And this is like a general overall search that I can use. So if it was a piece of glass stop, or a stock length of glass stop, I can just pick that part, select it, and add the item, and that's going to actually add it to my report here. So, and it will pick up whatever color it is using for other stock material for whatever you're adding. So it tries to figure out what color is needed and then applies it. So other things you can do, you can adjust quantities. Let's say I want to adjust the quantity here and I need 10 of these instead of 6. I can do that and it makes that bold as well. So basically any changes are kind of highlighted so that you know something's changed in that row. So it shows me what the original count was and what the manual adjustment is. Now I can remove those changes just by deleting this manual adjustment with the delete key, but I can also remove the entire line. So if I decided I didn't want this part, I can say remove line. Now instead of bolding that, what that does is it just puts a line through it and grays it out. So you still know that something's changed there, but it zeroed it out and kind of eliminated it from the list. And that won't print, by the way. So it won't print with the, you don't need it, so it's not going to put it on the report that you print. So you have the ability to do all those types of things. And then another thing you can do is add hardware. So there's a separate list in the GDS software, and this applies to all catalogs. So this is kind of like the glass list, glass table, where it's one list of glass that applies to any manufacturer that you're using. Same thing goes with this hardware list. And there's a bunch of pre-populated parts from Access Hardware, and you can actually pick something from here and select it, and it will add that to your job. But I forgot to show you that we can actually pick the finish too. So if we do that, it looks like there's just the one finish available. So if there were multiple finishes in this hardware thing, which you can do, you can add parts of your own, you can adjust the finishes and the pricing just like the regular parts list, only this is the one that's for hardware and it's for any catalog. So this is a way to add parts to your final parts list for a job as well. And by the way, that's the only place you can add other hardware, is in the final parts. So all those things can be done for the job itself, and that differs from that master parts list, which is kind of belongs to the catalog, and that's where everything's getting pulled from. But like I said, you can update that master if you made changes here that you want to carry back to the master. Now another thing you can do is look at edit job parts. And edit job parts does things like it's actually highlighting that there was no part type set here for this. So if I wanted to fix those types of things, I would say gasket. This is setting block. So I can actually click the little down arrow too and pick from the list. Like this is a fastener, so I can call this a screw. So I can fix these types of things. And I can also do things like change the stock length. So these are parts that haven't been compiled yet. This is like the origin of the parts for this particular job. And I can make changes to this list that only apply to the job. And then when the optimizer picks up those changes, the final parts report picks up those changes. So there's kind of multiple places to change things in the program. But keep in mind that this is only applicable to this job. Now the exception is we've given you a tool, and there's actually before I get to that, there's actually a little group of parts thing. So if I wanted to fix something like all these null, which a null is just a blank, so nothing there. If I wanted to fix all these null parts, and then I wanted to say change a group of parts, I can, just for this case of argument, I can check a box that says part type, and I can say I want all these to be miscellaneous. So if I want those to be miscellaneous, it's going to update those and save them. So now that filter is gone because there's no more null part types. So I can hit clear filter. It gets my entire list back. And now I can say, well, I want those changes to actually go back to the main catalog because I don't want that happening again to a new job I create. So I can go up here to sync parts, and I can say I want my changes from job parts, which is right here, to update the catalog, kind of like what I showed you in the last final parts. So if I hit that, it says you're about to overwrite, part information. So really what I'm doing now is I'm going to overwrite the parts that match up to these with part numbers in the master catalog with whatever changes I've made in the job parts list here. So if I say yes, it updates my master list so that those parts that I fixed will be fixed the next time I make a job. And they're already fixed in this job because we know I've done it here. But so the same thing you probably saw here is I can say I want to update from the catalog to job parts. So if I see some problems here and I actually went back over here, closed out of here, went back to parts list, made a bunch of changes, and then realized, oh, I've got those parts in this job, so I can say edit job parts again from the menu. I can say update from the catalog to the job parts. So instead of me having to go through again and make all the same changes here, if I've already done it in the main parts list, I can say, all right, let's update this job with whatever changes I've made in the main catalog. So we've given you those tools, and they're pretty handy once you get to know them and you know they're there. So that's pretty much it for what I wanted to cover today. Thanks.